Your mind hasn't had a moment of quiet all day. Not one. You've been thinking since you woke up, replaying things that already happened, running through things that haven't happened yet. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, you forgot to just live. This isn't distraction. This isn't anxiety in the clinical sense. This is something quieter, and in some ways more exhausting. It's the constant hum of a mind that won't let itself rest. You know what to do. You've read the advice. Take a breath. Be present. Let it go. But knowing and doing, those are not the same thing. And that gap, the one between knowing and actually stopping, that's where you've been stuck. And you're not alone in this. Buddhism has understood this pattern for a very long time. And what it says about overthinking might change the way you see your own mind. That's what we're going to explore today. And you felt this, that moment when you catch yourself thinking, and then thinking about the fact that you're thinking, and then wondering why you can't stop. It loops. It folds in on itself. And the harder you try to shut it down, the louder it gets. Buddhism calls this papancha. It roughly translates to mental proliferation, the mind's tendency to take one thought and spin it into 10, and those 10 into 100, not because something is wrong with you, but because the mind is doing exactly what it was trained to do. It was trained to solve, to anticipate, to protect you from what hasn't happened yet. The problem isn't that your mind is broken. The problem is that it's working too hard on problems it was never built to solve. Think about it this way. You have a thought. Maybe something someone said to you yesterday. Maybe a decision you haven't made yet. Maybe a version of yourself you're not sure you're becoming. Your mind grabs it, turns it over, looks at it from every angle, asks, what does this mean? What should I do? What if I'm wrong? What if it gets worse? What if it doesn't get better at all? Each question feels useful. Each pass feels like progress, but none of it resolves because the mind isn't really looking for answers. It's looking for certainty. And certainty, real certainty, is something it almost never finds. So it keeps going. The Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Most people hear that as inspiration, a reminder to think positively. But there's something deeper in it, something harder. If the mind is everything, then a mind that never stops is a life that never stops. And that's where it gets harder. Because here's the thing about overthinking. It doesn't feel like suffering. Not at first. It feels like being responsible. Like you're taking things seriously. Like you're doing the work. The person who's up at midnight, running through every possible outcome, doesn't feel like they're hurting themselves. They feel like they're being thorough. They feel like they're ahead of the problem. They feel like thinking harder is the same as thinking better, but it isn't. And here's what's actually happening underneath all that thinking. Every time the mind spins without resolution, it sends a signal to the nervous system, a small one. Something is unresolved. Something might be dangerous. Stay alert. And the nervous system listens every single time. It doesn't check whether the threat is real. It doesn't verify whether the worry is rational. It just responds because that's what it was built to do. So you walk around in a body that has been quietly on alert for months, maybe years, tired in a way that rest doesn't fix, tense in a way that relaxation doesn't reach, a low-level exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much, but from thinking too much about too many things that haven't happened yet. And you know this feeling. You've been here before. This is what Buddhism means when it talks about dukkha. usually translated as suffering. But a more precise translation is a kind of low-grade dissatisfaction, the low-grade friction of a mind that is always slightly out of alignment with the present moment. Not pain, not crisis, just the constant, quiet weight of a mind that is always somewhere else. In the past, rehearsing regret. In the future, rehearsing fear. And in the present, barely present at all. You're technically here. You're going through the motions, answering messages, making meals, having conversations. But part of you is always somewhere else, running a scenario that hasn't happened yet, or replaying one that can't be changed. And the strange thing is, you know this. You can see yourself doing it, and you still can't stop. That gap between awareness and action is exactly what Buddhism is most interested in. Not in telling you to think better thoughts, not in giving you techniques to force the mind quiet, but in helping you understand what the mind is actually doing when it does this to you. Here's how it actually works. A thought arrives, something small. Maybe it's not even about anything important. Maybe it's just a memory that surfaced for no clear reason. Your mind registers it, and then, without asking your permission, it runs the first follow-up question. What does this mean? And that question produces another thought. And that thought produces another question. And before you realize what happened, you're 15 steps away from where you started, standing inside a scenario that has nothing to do with your actual life right now. The mind didn't do this to punish you. It did this because it was following its own logic. Its job is to find patterns, to make connections, to trace things back to their cause, so it can predict what comes next. That function kept your ancestors alive. The ones who could anticipate danger survived. The ones who could plan ahead fed their families. The mind that worries is the mind that prepared, and that served humanity for a very long time. But here's what changed. The threats are different now. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a predator in the grass and an unanswered text message. It responds to both the same way. Full alert, full attention. All resources toward solving the problem. And when the problem can't be solved, because it's not really a solvable problem, because it's social or existential or uncertain in ways that don't resolve cleanly, the mind just keeps running. It's not irrational. It's actually very rational, given the tools it's working with. It just doesn't know when to stop. And here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Most of what we experience as overthinking isn't actually about the topic we're thinking about. You think you're thinking about the email you didn't send. You think you're thinking about whether you made the right choice. You think you're thinking about what that person meant by what they said, or the silence after they said it. But underneath all of those surface thoughts, there's usually one of two things: a fear you haven't named, or a need you haven't met. The email isn't really about the email. It's about fear of conflict, or fear of being seen as inadequate, or a need for connection that hasn't found a real outlet. The decision you can't stop second-guessing isn't really about the decision. It's about a deeper fear of being wrong, of choosing badly, of becoming someone you didn't intend to be. The conversation you keep replaying isn't about what was said. It's about something that still feels unresolved, at a level words never quite reached. The overthinking is just the surface layer, the mind spinning around something deeper that it doesn't quite know how to approach directly. So it circles and circles and circles. Something is shifting in how you understand this, because once you see that, the whole approach changes completely. You stop trying to think your way through the thought, and you start asking a different question. Not how do I stop thinking about this, but what is this thought protecting me from seeing? The Buddha put it plainly. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The thoughts that loop the longest are usually the ones circling something true that the mind isn't ready to look at directly yet. It's not a flaw. It's a form of protection. The mind is trying to handle something real. It just doesn't have the right tools for it. So it reaches for the one tool it knows best. More thinking, more analysis, more scenarios, more preparation for things that may never arrive. But more thinking applied to something that isn't a thinking problem is like trying to see in the dark by squinting harder. The effort doesn't help. It just makes the original problem harder to locate. So what does help? Not more analysis, not a perfectly structured plan, not positive affirmations layered over the noise. The first real shift is this: stop treating your thoughts as facts. This is harder than it sounds because the mind is very convincing. When you're deep in the loop, the thought doesn't feel like a thought. It feels like reality. It feels like evidence of something. It feels like the truth about who you are, how things are going, and what's probably going to happen next. But it isn't. It's a thought, a mental event, something that arose. And things that arise in time pass. In Buddhist practice, this is at the heart of mindfulness. Buddhists call it the witnessing mind, the practice of learning to observe thought rather than becoming thought. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. The thought says, "This is never going to work out." Awareness notices the thought, sees it, watches it, doesn't follow it down the road. The thought says, "You should have done it differently." Awareness notices that too. Doesn't fight it, doesn't try to replace it with a better thought, doesn't argue with it or validate it, just sees it clearly, the way you'd watch clouds drift across the sky. You're not the cloud, you're the sky. And the sky doesn't have to stop being the sky just because a storm passes through it. This sounds simple. Being simple doesn't mean being easy. The practice is real, and it works differently than trying to silence the mind, because it doesn't require silence. It just requires a small but fundamental shift in where you're standing when the thoughts arrive. You stop standing inside the thought. You step back from it. And from that distance, it has a little less grip, a little less authority, a little less power to pull you down the loop. You've been walking for weeks. And this isn't just a meditation concept. This is something you can practice in a normal day. It's something you can practice while you're making coffee, while you're sitting in traffic, while you're in the middle of a meeting, and your mind has wandered somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. The practice isn't complicated. When you notice the thought running, you don't try to stop it. You don't argue with it. You just name what's happening. The mind is thinking again. That's all. Just that small step of naming it creates a gap between you and the content. And in that gap, something changes. You remember that you are not the thought. You're the one noticing it. That distinction seems minor, but the shift it creates over time is one of the most significant changes a person can make in how they experience their own life. Because the mind that learns to witness itself is a mind that is no longer completely at the mercy of whatever happens to arise. You can have a difficult thought without being destroyed by it. You can feel uncertainty without needing it to resolve immediately. You can sit with the unknown long enough to realize that the unknown itself is not the enemy. When the overthinking is at its worst, there's usually a story running underneath it. A story about what it means, not just the thought itself, but what the thought says about you. The mind doesn't just think. It narrates. It interprets. It builds a case. You thought about the same thing again, and the mind notes. You're still stuck. You woke up anxious again, and the mind notes. This is who you are now. You couldn't focus again today, and the mind quietly suggests, maybe this is just how it's going to be. These interpretations feel like observations. They feel like honest self-assessment, but they're not neutral. They're stories, and stories are not facts. Buddhist practice is very clear on this. The narrative the mind builds about itself is just another thought. It's not more reliable or more true than any other thought that passes through. The mind that worries isn't a broken mind. The mind that overthinks isn't a weak mind. It's a mind doing what minds do. Running patterns, trying to find ground, trying to be ready. And recognizing that, really recognizing it, not just intellectually, but in your body. In the moment when the thought arrives, that recognition is the beginning of something different. You stop being someone who is broken by their thoughts, and you start being someone who can watch their thoughts with something closer to curiosity than fear. That shift doesn't happen all at once, but it happens. And when it does, the space that opens up is real. But here's what nobody tells you about this. The overthinking doesn't always stop just because you've seen through it. Sometimes it gets louder first because the mind is used to being listened to, used to being followed, used to you going wherever it points. And when you stop engaging, when you stop feeding it with your full attention, it escalates. It tries harder. It brings bigger thoughts, more urgent scenarios, more convincing fears, the ones that feel genuinely important, the ones that make you think, no, wait, this one I actually do need to think through. That's not a sign that you're doing it wrong. That's a sign that you're doing it right. The mind has been in charge for a long time. It doesn't hand over the reins without some resistance. The practice isn't to win a battle against the mind. It's to stop fighting altogether, to let the thoughts be there without giving them the energy to grow. In Buddhist teaching, this is sometimes described through the image of the second arrow. The first arrow is the original thought or the original pain. Something difficult happened. Something uncertain is coming. That's the first arrow. It lands. It hurts. And sometimes that's unavoidable. The second arrow is everything we add on top of it. The self-judgment, the frustration with yourself for still being here. The why is this still happening? The I should be over this by now. The what's wrong with me for not being able to let go. The I can't believe I'm still thinking about this at midnight. Most of our real suffering doesn't come from the original thought. It comes from the second arrow, the one we aim at ourselves. When you stop shooting the second arrow, the first one loses most of its power. The thought can be there. You don't have to make it mean anything beyond what it actually is. Just a thought, moving through a mind that notices things. The same mind that notices birdsong in the morning. The same mind that notices when something is funny. The same mind that, in its better moments, notices beauty in things you almost walked past. That mind is not broken. It's just been given too much to carry. There's a teaching that comes from the Dhammapada, one of the oldest collections of the Buddha's words. It begins with this: mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. Most people read that as a statement about power. The mind is everything, so control the mind. But there's a gentler reading available. If the mind leads everything, then changing how you relate to the mind changes everything that follows. Not through force, not through perfect control, but through understanding. When you understand why the mind does what it does, you stop being at war with it. And when you stop being at war with it, you stop generating all the friction that was exhausting you in the first place. This is the shift that's available to you. Not a mind that never spins, but a different relationship to the spinning. One that can hold the noise without being controlled by it. One that can let a thought pass without following it to the edge. One that can recognize the loop starting and make a different choice. Not every time at first, but more often than before. Over time, something begins to shift. Not silence. Not the absence of thought, but a different quality of presence. The gap between the thought arising and the moment you get pulled into it, that gap gets bigger. That space opens up. And in that space, there's something quieter. Not peace in the way people talk about it on the internet. Not a blissed out state with no problems and no noise. Just a little more of you that isn't defined by what the mind is currently running. A little more ground to stand on. A little more room to breathe. A little more of your actual life being lived instead of watched from inside the loop. And here's a practical way to think about it. Most people try to manage overthinking by changing the content of their thoughts. Replace the negative thought with a positive one. Challenge the irrational belief. Reframe the situation. These techniques have their place, but they all share the same assumption, that the problem is what you're thinking, and the solution is to think something better. Buddhism takes a different view entirely. The problem isn't the content, it's the relationship. It's the way the mind grabs a thought and treats it as though the thought and the self are the same thing. You can have an anxious thought without being an anxious person. You can have an uncertain thought without being a person who can't handle uncertainty. You can have a thought that says everything is falling apart without that thought having any authority over your actual life, but only if you know the difference between what you're thinking and who you are. That difference is everything. And that's the thing about all of this. You don't need a quieter mind. You need a different relationship with the mind you have. One that doesn't require silence before you can feel okay. One that can hold the noise without being controlled by it. One that can let a thought be a thought and return quietly to where you already are. The mind will think. That's what it does. It's not the enemy. It's not something to be fixed or suppressed. It's just a very enthusiastic problem solver that sometimes needs to be reminded with a little wisdom and patience that not everything is a problem. And the practice of noticing that gently, without frustration, with compassion toward yourself, without giving yourself a hard time for needing the reminder. That practice is quiet. It's not dramatic. It doesn't look like anything from the outside, but it changes something real. Not overnight, not all at once, but gradually the loops get a little shorter. The grip gets a little looser, and the moments of actual presence The ones where you're just here, just breathing, just living without commentary. Those start to come a little more often. Not because the mind became perfect, but because you stopped needing it to be. You don't need to get this right every time. You don't need to become someone who never overthinks. You just need one moment of space between the thought and the reaction. Then another after that. You already know the mind that spins. You've lived in it for a long time. Now you're starting to know the awareness that watches the spinning. That part of you was always here. It didn't go anywhere. It was just quiet, waiting beneath the noise. And the more you return to it, the more you'll find that the quiet you've been searching for outside was always available inside. Not after everything calms down. Right now, exactly as things are. That's enough. And most days, that's everything. If this kind of reflection is something you're looking for, consider subscribing. Every video on this channel goes a little deeper into the questions your everyday life doesn't have time to ask. And sometimes those are exactly the questions worth sitting with.